It sort of is what it is. But I tell you what, it's all worth it for the next match. It's a street fight for the world title. Triple H defending against Cactus Jack. These guys have feuded for a long, long time. Back in 1997, we would see Mankind go toe to toe with Triple H, and eventually it would build, and we would see him take on Dude Love, and then Cactus Jack would debut in Madison Square Garden, the same building, back in 1997. And they're rolling all the way back then, and it continues. But this one really gets heated up on January 3rd on Monday Night Raw. Triple H wins the world title from Big Show and mocks Foley with an impersonator. A week later, The Rock brings every superstar to the ring and demands that Foley be reinstated, or the entire roster would walk out. Foley was reinstated, and he requests a street fight. Foley and Triple H are in a 4-on-4 tag match later that night. Triple H would pin Foley after using the ring bell and delivering a couple of pedigrees. And after the match, Foley takes his mask off and attacks Triple H. That week on SmackDown, Foley returns to his Cactus Jack persona and takes off the Mankind attire to reveal the Cactus Jack look. And now we're here, and they get plenty of time, 26 minutes and 51 seconds. I gotta say, and I'm sure some will disagree, I think this is the best match Triple H ever had. It is, maybe not the most talked about match that Foley had in the company because of, the King of the Ring from 98, but this is great shit, man. And if you're going to watch one thing from the network on the old school stuff that we're going to cover on all my podcasts this week, this is the match. Meltzer gave it 4.5 stars. I'd give it 5. I absolutely loved it. Even Meltzer said, this is an excellent and dramatic brawl. Helmsley delivered a hard chair, and then they were off to the races. I mean, big bumps all over the place, lots of violence, but lots of psychology too, telling a hell of a story. I thought it was tremendous, and they're doing everything. I mean, tables and chairs and thumbtacks.
They had a real street fight.
Yeah.
They used shit. They used their fists. They used their feet. They struck a lot. There was dramatic use of blood that was accentuated the drama of the moment. You got two guys that had great chemistry together. They respected one another, and they were both unselfish in that respect. Mick knew that Triple H was on his roll, was his ascending to the top, and to stay there, to get there. He's still in his journey, but once he got there, he stayed still there, which is great. But Mick Foley certainly helped make Triple H the star that it is today, with some of the performances that he provided Triple H in the matches that they had. And to his credit, this series of matches really we were able to take Triple H out of that Greenwich snob, hoity-toity guy, that this son of a bitch is tough. He's a cerebral assassin. Somebody gave him that nickname. I can't remember who that guy was. But the cerebral assassin became a tough guy as a result of his performances with Mick Foley. And I think that's everlasting. And that's exactly where his image is today.
Really go out of your way to watch this one. Remarkable. And there is something I want to bring up in here, because they're going to use barbed wire. There's a barbed wire wrap 2x4. And it wasn't that long ago, maybe just a couple of weeks prior to this, that the Athletic Commission would not allow ECW to use barbed wire. Of course, here the WWF is using it. It's always felt like if you were an ECW loyalist, there were sort of two sets of rules. And I would think, as a business guy, a lot of that's just driven by the revenue. You're going to have to pay more if you're the WWF, because your fees are based on your attendance and tickets sold and your gate. So maybe they're willing to overlook some stuff if you're paying a little more. Or was this more, theater, and when you guys were using rubber tip barbed wire? What was the story?
I think WWE had the clout and the money talks. And WWE had a guy there for many years. He was a judge in upstate New York named Rich Herring. And Rich Herring had a real strong relationship to the New York State Athletic Commission and many of its members, because Rich had been around boxing and stuff for years. And that we always called him the judge, because he was, like I said, a judge in upstate New York who worked part-time as a judge, and would commute down to Stanford to the office. I think Rich had positive interactions to get that done. But boy, it added so much. It was done the right way. It was done at the right time. It had amazing drama. And that was, those guys wanted to make sure that when you left the Garden that night, you weren't just talking about who won the Rumble. You're talking about that goddamn street fight was amazing. And it was. It was as good a street fight as I think I've ever called, to be honest with you. And I called a lot of big bloodbaths in the Mid-South, UWF, WCW, lots of them. None of them had the drama that I could, because again, the facility, the venue, it's a Garden. And Triple H growing up in New Hampshire and Mick growing up in Long Island, the Garden was the destination for the WWF that they followed when they were kids. They were there, man. They were there in a main event level match before 19,000 plus with all the whistles and bells and toys that they needed, and they delivered.
Let's talk about the Garden and the significance to Foley. I mean, this is something that even when he was a fan was a special building. Did you ever have conversations with Foley about what it meant to be in, sort of world title matches like this and big moments at the Garden?
Absolutely. Mick is my guy. We know the story of me having to convince McMahon that let's give him a chance. And Vince saying, I'm going to acquiesce to you, JR, because of your position. And I want you to know what it's like to get your heart broken when a talent that you love, that you have a big emotional investment in, maybe not objective really to the matter that you should be. You need to know what it feels like to have your heart broken. And I believe this guy's going to break your heart. I never even thought of that. I never thought of anything but success for Mick, because upon talking to Mick over the years, even before either one of us got to WWE, when we were both in WCW, my goal was no different than his. I wanted to broadcast from the Garden. I wanted to sit in that world's most famous arena and do my thing. And so did he. And it was never lost on either of us. But for Mick, after hitchhiking and getting a ride to the Garden or whatever over his teenage years, he was there for Snuka and Morocco, jumping off the top of the cell. The pictures showed Mick in the audience. It was just it was a dream. It was almost too good to be true. It's almost like it was booked by a screenwriter or something. It couldn't be this real, but it was that real. It meant that much to him. And as far as Hunter's concerned, he's a Kowalski guy, and he grew up in the Northeast. And any wrestling fan that grows up in the Northeast is a WWF guy originally, and as it morphed on through. But the Garden was the destination, to make no mistake about it. So both these guys are in these high-level matches at this major pay-per-view before a 19,000 plus sold out, over $1 million gate, and a lot of them came to see that match. So I think both of them were gassed to the max on that night as far as emotion and enthusiasm.